So here we go. Another comparison. Welcome back to the Rebel Tech channel. I'm Justin, and in this video we're going to be talking about the AT2020, the AT2035, and see if the extra bit of cash makes that much of a difference with the AT2035 compared to the lesser in price AT2020. This is a comparison that I've been wanting to do for a while now. And I just released the AT2035 video, and I have a revisited version of the AT2020 out as well. So you can go check out the individual videos that goes a little bit more in depth to these microphones. This video is all about the comparison between the two, so I won't go too specific with some details, but I will point out the major ones that will influence the decision that you need to make when deciding, do I need the switches? Do I need that extra bit of something for the AT2035? Or will that $100 microphone stand up and last me a long time, as it has for a lot of content creators? So first off, as always, let's go into the builds and compare how these things look, how they're put together, and if that really makes a difference with how they're constructed. The 2020 is a little bit smaller than the AT2035, not that much, but it's noticeable. But aesthetically, they're both sleek, black designs, very sturdy mesh grills, has the roundish look around it. Really, as I said in the 2035 video, the 2035 is a beefed up version of the 2020. And if you see them side by side, it's pretty obvious comparison. But if you were to see them individually, maybe you might not notice it too much. But really specifically, the major differences as far as aesthetics are concerned are the edges where the logos are. The 2020 has like a band wrapped around it where it hides all the screws and things to take it apart. The 2035, on the other hand, has it printed on the body itself. So not a big deal, just something to point out as far as aesthetics are concerned. The other major thing is the AT2035 has switches, low cutoff, and a 10 dB pad. Alright, so now let's get into some techie talk about the specs, talk about the tech. We're not going to go in depth with everything. If you want more specifics, go to the specific videos on these, but I will point out the differences and the things that stand out as far as the specs are concerned. So if you see here, the sensitivity on the 2020 is -37 decibels, and it is -33 on the 2035. A little bit more sensitive on the 2020, so keep that in mind. Maybe it comes in play when dealing with the noise issue. Is it an issue? Don't know. I'll have you guys decide when we do the silence test. Next up, we have a dynamic range difference here. The 2020 has a dynamic range of 124 decibels, and the dynamic range on the 2035 is 136 decibels. Now, the last thing as far as specs are concerned, the signal to noise ratio, 74 decibels on the 2020 and 82 on the 2035. Now, that will play a role when we do the silence test. Put a little pin in it right now until we get into that noise test. But now we're going to get into the frequency response curve, which in my opinion is the most important part of a microphone. Now, if you want more breakdown of the frequency response, go check out the individual videos. I will say that a couple of times in this video, but I will point out some of the major ones right now. So if you see these frequency response curves side by side, the obvious thing is the 2035 has a low cutoff option. So you can roll off 80 hertz, which a lot of times those are rumbles, those are things that you might not want to hear. But if you are getting a proximity effect like this, if I was to be up close like now, you might hear more of a rumble. If I engage it and compare it to the 2020, you see or hear that the 2035 has less of a rumble, maybe, if I get a little bit closer and more gravelly with my voice. And if you compare it to the 2020, maybe those frequencies are not as clean, maybe. All depends on how you hear it, what speakers you're using, or if you're listening to on your phone, you might not notice it, but if you do, let me know. I'm curious. A couple people have noticed a difference on their phones, so let me know. Now, off to the mids. I'm going to keep it simple. They're both fairly flat. The 2035 has a little bit more of a flat curve, less bumps, but for the most part, they're fairly flat, which is nice with a spoken word microphone. And for the most part, people are going to be using this for spoken word. Next up, we have the highs, and this is where you're going to get your presence boosts. Starting off from 2K to 5K, you'll notice that the curves are fairly similar. The 2035 is a little bit more boosted, but not like crazy amounts, but enough to let you notice it. And maybe in that frequency, maybe if your voice lands there, maybe some of my voice lands there, you'll notice some presence boost right there. Next up, they both have boosts at 6K and dips at 7.5, which, again, depends on the frequencies that you're putting into it. Now, finally, the 2020 has a boost at 9K and starts to decrease with a slight bump around 14, while the 2035 has a rise from 9K to 13K and then dips off. The things that really stand out, 2035 has a little bit more boosted in some aspects, and the 2035 has a flatter midsection. Not by much, but it is significant enough to point out. And sometimes this chart will reflect the tone. This chart really shows, meaning a frequency response curve, it really shows how the microphone was tuned and what they put into this microphone and give you a visual of what they did. Not necessarily how it sounds, but it's a different representation than using your ears. Alright, so a couple more tests while we're in my little studio here before we go into the booth and an untreated room. We're going to do a silence test. I'll do a little bit on each, but the only difference that I'll have is engage the low cutoff on part of the silence test for the 2035. Alright, so there is your silence test. Maybe you notice some of the noises from outside, like a dehumidifier possibly. Also rattling of pipes. So now let's do an off-axis test. And I'll be doing this in the studio, and I'll be doing this in the untreated room. So we'll do an off-axis test, 90s and 180. And I'll do, as I did in the 2035 video, with and without the low cutoff. Alright, Audio Technica side, stage left, 90-degree test on both these microphones, a little further away than the 2035, and I'm about a foot away from the 2020 and a little bit more 2035. Moving back a little further, about like 3-4 feet away from the AT2020, and this is going to be a rejection test for all these sounds, frequencies, maybe some bouncing off the wood walls. Let me know down in the comments if you notice. Next up, stage right, 90-degree test on the 2035 side. A little closer to the 2035, about, I guess, 2-3 feet away. And this is going to be a rejection test, no low cutoff on the 2035 right now. Lastly, 180-degree test on the off-axis rejection. And this is what you're going to hear. No low cutoff on. We're going to switch over to the low cutoff right now after I do this test and see if you notice a difference. Back on stage left, about 2 feet away from the 2020. On the 2020 side, obviously. Low cutoff is on. It's on the 2035, so see if you notice a difference on the rejection from the left side. Stage left as it is. Again, back on stage right, Audio Technica 2035 side, and this is going to be your off-axis test to see if you notice any major reverberations, possibly. I don't know. You let me know. Finally, 180-degree test from the microphones with the low cutoff on the 2035 on, and see if you notice a difference in the off-axis rejection from the rear, and see if the low cutoff actually makes a difference with that. We're in the booth right now with the AT2020 and the AT2035, and this is going to be a cool comparison because these are two of the most popular microphones for home studio setups and for people who are just starting out and starting to get into that intermediate level of content creation or whatever you're working with that needs a microphone and a performance, mostly a vocal performance, because a lot of times these microphones are going to be used as vocal microphones. Sure, you could use it on acoustic guitars and a lot of other various applications, but voiceover and a voice performance is usually what it's going to be used for. And I'm very intrigued to see and hear this in post because they're very similar frequency responses, but different in a sense that could change the way that you hear it. So right now I'm listening to the 2020, which I was listening to the 2035 earlier, and I'm noticing the levels right now are roughly about the same. Right now I'm recording to about between -12 and -6. I usually try to keep it in that range so I got some headroom and so it's not too quiet. And of course 32-bit float files are great, but it's always good to practice good fundamentals when it comes to recording your audio, regardless if you have any fancy tech. So what I'm really noticing here is a little bit more airy. It feels a little more full and like out and open. And if I was to go back to the 2035, I noticed that not only does it have a little bit more closed feel to it, it has, this is of course me just listening to it live. This could be totally different or a little different when I'm listening to it in post and when you guys are listening to it over YouTube with some compression that they add with the volume. But for the most part, you're going to notice the differences. All right, so the low cutoff is on the 2035. And to emphasize this test, I will give you a bit of a proximity effect. So I'm getting up a little closer. It takes out that gravelly thing and that gravelly sound that below 80 hertz kind of grunts, as I said in the 2035 video, if you saw it. A little spoiler, not really a spoiler, but I compared it to Henry Cavill's grunts as Geralt of Rivia in The Witcher. So it kind of takes away from those. So if you are doing a Geralt of Rivia impression, don't put the low cutoff on because it will take out some of the I can't do it. I wish I could. Okay, one more test. Plosives. Do a quick one, nothing crazy. AT2020. AT2035. There's your plosive test. And that's how it is in the booth. I really enjoy both these microphones. As I said, 2020 sounds a little more airy. The 2035 has a more compressed sound. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but it does sound a little bit more compressed. You let me know down in the comments what you think. Now, off to the untreated room. Okay, so we're in the untreated room with the AT2035 and the AT2020, and this is what the environment will be if you have a room that is about 10 by 10, maybe 8 by 10, 11 by 11, something in that rough range with a 8-foot ceiling. I have a area rug over a wood floor. The area rug goes a long way and really changes the dynamic of reflective surfaces. Of course, putting stuff in the room also helps, but area rug, big plus. So the first test we're going to do within the untreated room, obviously the AT2020 doesn't have any switches, so we'll engage the low cutoff to see if you notice a major difference between the two. Alright, so the low cutoff is on the AT2035, and this is what you're going to hear with a roll-off of 80 hertz compared to no roll-off on the AT2020. Of course, you can always do it in post, and you could always do it on your recorder if it has that option. But on board, the microphone has it. So let's do a little proximity effect comparing the two. And you'll notice that it's a little less rumbly on the 2035, and it's probably a little more rumbly on the 2020. So keep this all in mind, and this is going to be your example for low cutoff on one and not the other, because it doesn't have it. That's why. Alright, low cutoff is off, and we're going to do a off-axis rejection test. For this, I'm doing 90, 90, and 180. I'm not going to engage any of the switches. If you are interested in off-axis tests with the switches on, I did it in the AT2035 video, so go check that out in that section of the video, or go check out the whole video. I go all into all the specs and all the tech, and maybe a little bit more involved than I did in this one, because this is more of a comparison and not a breakdown of one. Okay, we're 90 degrees from the microphones on the AT2035 side, stage right as I've come to know and love and all that stuff. And this is what you're going to hear with these microphones off axis. There you go. There's a little bit better of an example of the off axis test. I'm about like 2-3 feet away right now, and this is what you're going to hear with the off axis rejection. And some reflective surfaces might be encountered in this, but let me know. Alright, so we're on the opposite side, 90 degrees, about 2-3 feet away. AT2020 side, and this is what you're going to hear with your off-axis rejection. Maybe some of the reflections off the glass are affecting it, but you guys let me know down in the comments what you think, and see if there's any major differences between the 90 degrees. And finally, we're going to go to the 180. Lastly, the 180 degree test for the off-axis rejection for the AT2035 and AT2020. And I'm right around the camera, about 2-3 feet, maybe 4 feet now. And you're probably noticing some reflections off that glass of the window. So let me know if you notice it, and yeah. And of course, I'm speaking louder than a lot of other noises, like fan of a computer or clicking of a keyboard. So maybe it might not be that bad if you're making noise that is less than this. Alright, so that is your off-axis test. There is the untreated room. If you want anything more specific on either one of these, I did individual videos on each one, so go check those out. I go a little bit more in depth with the tech specs and all the individual stuff based on each microphone in their individual videos. So I don't want to make it too long because it would go forever if I was to do everything. And there it is, the AT2020 versus the AT2035. Here's the AT2035 right here. No switches are on, but I feel that the 2035 was a surprising microphone for voiceover work, and it definitely is a good upgrade from the 2020. And for the price difference, I might even recommend it to be your first microphone, because it has just enough from the 2020 and it's not that much more. You could even find it at a cheaper price on eBay or whatever. Reverb's another good website to look at audio gear and stuff like that, music gear. If you're looking for your first microphone, or if you're upgrading from that $100 mark or something lower, this is a great option if you're working in the booth. As you saw, if you have an untreated room, it actually holds up pretty well in an untreated room, of course, if you're close to it. And you saw with those proximity off-axis stuff, you're going to notice the difference if you're further away or closer. So it's things to consider when you're getting this microphone. And absolutely worth it. I would definitely recommend this. As I said before, it's better. It's better than the 2020. But it costs a little bit more if you get it new. If you get it used, like I did, I got it for cheaper than an AT2020. So keep an eye out. So you might be able to get it for the same price. So thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you liked the video, please hit the like button down below and consider subscribing for more videos like this, more videos about microphones, tech, stuff like that. Anything that I seem to think of that has to do with that stuff. I have some more Zoom F6 videos planned. I have a video with these two microphones, the 2020 and the 2035 versus the 4040, all three of them at the end of the month. I also have a video with the 2035 and the 4040 coming out as well. So keep an eye out for that. It's all videos that I've been wanting to make for a while, ever since I got this, and they're on their way. Hopefully next week sometime I get one, maybe both of those out. And also one more thing is the finale of my shotgun pencil condenser microphone videos. That is the Sennheiser versus the Deity versus the Octava. It's not really a versus series. It's more so a series of comparing what environments those are stronger in. And of course, if you have any comments about these microphones or any microphones or tech in general, please leave it down in the comments. You could ask me more directly when I stream on Wednesdays and Saturdays right on this channel. Maybe going back to Twitch. I don't know. It all depends on if people show up. If no one shows up on the YouTube one coming up in the next couple weeks, I might go back to Twitch, and I might just do Twitch full-time as my streaming platform, because I don't know. I'm just trying to figure it out. If you have any comments on that, if you like one platform more than the other, let me know down in the comments as well. And until next time, be safe, be kind, and I'll see you in the next video. They say the mighty penguin will travel 300 miles with a pebble in hand to meet his mate. That's a stupid fucking line. What is wrong with my head? Oh god. This is what happens when there's no one around. The madness sets in.